From Rixie, this is Frameform, a show about movies, moving, and everything in between. I'm Hannah Weber.
I'm Jen Ray.
And I'm Claire Schweitzer.
I'm just excited that, we've made it this far. I can't believe that next week is our last episode. Well, I mean, second to last, but technical last.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it's gone by. Just thinking of quarantine as a whole and then sort of the period that we've been working on this show, they kind of feel like almost like two separate years or like two separate, extended lengths of time. It's just so hard to fathom. But it's been incredible to see. I mean, not only you see you guys and talk to you guys every week, but also to see the reception that the show has received so far.
Totally. And I love that every week we're putting out a different conversation, have different interviews, cover these topics. In a way, I think we're covering more ground than we would if we were just putting up something that we maybe already did at a live event and just sharing it. It's created for this format, and that's been really satisfying too. And not to mention, as we talked about in a recent episode, the lack of pressure when it's audio only and we don't have to worry about making everything aesthetically beautiful at the same time.
I think one thing about our setup, though, the whole quarantine and Zoom, the coexistence. I'm not saying that we decided to make this podcast happen because of quarantine. Again, like we said before, this has been a discussion that we've been kind of wanting to do. But I think quarantine kind of just took that extra step of people are having these meetings over Zoom, and there is a way to work around having this kind of podcast actually happen. I think it was just the whole everyone had to realign of how to make these conversations and meetings happen remotely. And honestly, I think the timing of it all kind of helped, actually make it happen, because it's I know Zoom, or I'm familiar with it. People were more comfortable with the platform at that time. So I don't know, the stars aligned for us in a way,
Yeah, it didn't feel like as big of an ask to say to people, hey, can you hop on a Zoom call and yada yada. Not that they wouldn't have done it before, but I think you're so right. People have been eased into it. And even for us, I think that we were in this limbo where we have the things we're normally doing in screendance. We see this change, and the drive we had more than anything that, as far as things we could do was we need to talk about what's going on. We need to talk about what has been, how we can navigate through this. And we identified that there's this huge boom happening as a result of necessity. So I think it's also the right time for this conversation. I remember for years, at festivals and Hannah saying I really want to do a podcast, and yeah, that's a great idea. And in a way, I think 2020 was the right time for it to happen. And I'm just so grateful for you two and everyone that's been on the show and collaborated with us, and excited for next season too, because we're going to revisit some of our classic episode themes, but also throw in a whole bunch of new great ideas. So yay.
And something else that's been different about, doing this podcast, which again is sort of like a symptom of the year we've had, is that it kind of solved, at least for me, it solved one huge problem, which was how can these conversations exist outside of the festival space and outside of, the one weekend where you're around, dozens of people who are passionate as you are about this form. And then those conversations just kind of go away or manifest somewhere else that's wholly inaccessible. But here, I feel that the conversations we have are directly responding to what's happening right now with the bloom of screendance, as well as what is being discussed. And so the people I've seen at these festivals, now I'm seeing on a more regular basis, and we're having a much more sustained conversation. And I feel that because of that, people feel a greater sense of community and feel, in a way, more mobilized to make work in the way that they can, which granted there aren't a whole lot of ways to make it, but it's heartening to see.
Absolutely. And when we all come back to these larger events, like of course, I'm grateful I was able to host like a small screening in DC this year, but that's not most festivals. Most festivals weren't even legally allowed to have live events. So I think that when we're able to actually get back to live events, having had that sustained conversation and being able to even just point to another platform for this is really great as well. Because as much as dance film and screen dance is widely enjoyed, it doesn't have as much of a home. And in some ways that's good. You know, I don't want like a world of dance version of screen dance. You know, I don't want things to get so pop and commercial that we lose the intellectual investigation of things. But I do think that it's nice to see more mainstream examples, and audio is a great way to make it accessible, even though we're talking about visual forms. And even the name Frameform came from the idea that, you know, not my title. I think Hannah came up with it, or Claire.
Yeah,
we were brainstorming
Hannah.
a bunch of ideas. Yeah, so Hannah was like,
Hannah's
how about
copyright.
Frameform? Totally, right? Because we were like brainstorming these different words, and even though it's in Frameform, at least we can have these conversations in waveforms.
Nice.
That sums it up right there. I mean, I have to say too, like, I think one thing that this podcast has really gained is just putting the filmmakers and artists a platform to use their voice even more. I mean, we basically kind of made this behind the scenes scenario of learning about the films themselves and getting to know the artists. And that's something that you don't really get at dance film festivals. I mean, sometimes you get a panel or some kind of artist talk, but I mean, not everyone has an hour to spare at a dance film festival. Usually they're an hour or like a couple days and then it's gone. So I definitely applaud all of us for just kind of collecting the people that we had in our bank, as well as the interviews from last year from the Cascadia Dance and Cinema Festival that Jen organized and reached out to, you know, finally have their voices shared here.
Oh, and this was such a group effort, though. Like, even the tap panel, I remember the two of you were there, like, late night, long days, helping everything get set up. So this really has been such a great team, and I appreciate you both. Also, we got to thank Screen Dance Forum for helping us co-produce some of those earlier episodes, all the ones done at Cascadia, Vancouver Tap Dance Society, like, and yeah, everyone that came on to the show and poured their heart out. Thank you, because we learn mainly from, you know, we can learn from textbooks, you can learn from a course, but I think learning from someone else's experience and getting those anecdotal and very human, sometimes funny, sometimes harsh, sometimes heartbreaking stories that's the stuff that really sticks and the stuff that really inspires us too. So I've really enjoyed everyone we've had on, and I can't wait to see who we're going to have next year. I know that we've all got our wish lists, and maybe there's some emails in the inbox or some people we don't know about, and maybe someone's listening and they want to be on the show, or they know someone great to be on the show, but the possibilities are endless, which is awesome.
And again, like, it's amazing seeing, I mean, I don't know how much direct feedback either of you have had about the show, but I mean, one moment that actually stands out was a moment when I was on a shoot about a week ago, and one of my colleagues actually started clapping the Frameform theme, and it was, and yeah, and even hearing just those things like, "Hey, I love the show," or like, "Oh, I learned something new today," like, that's, you know, very, very heartening. And going off what Jen was saying, I mean, we're happy that the show is giving you something, and tell us more of what you want. We would love to, you know, go down whatever rabbit holes you posit, so feel free to send them our way.
I think my favorite episodes have been the ones where we get really heavy on the advice. Like, we don't exactly plan or script the episodes. Like we know what films we're covering. We watch them ahead of time. We know generally what topics. We all have our individual perspectives we want to bring, but it's a lot of free-flowing conversation. And I really love when we give advice. There's some episodes, like I'm thinking the nudity episode, the sound episode, obviously creative minds and bottom lines. Just when we start listing off our personal, and as I'm listening, I can think about the three of us and like our work backgrounds and our project backgrounds and being like, yeah, that would be the advice that Claire would give. That would be the advice that Hannah would give. So that I think that's one of my favorite things to do on the show is when we start rambling off different helpful advice that hopefully saves people thousands of dollars and tears and years of their life.
Yep. I cried, so you don't have to.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we've all had our horror stories of some kind of experience. I mean, if you have had a horror experience, let us know. I mean, everyone can learn something from filmmaking and dance filmmaking in general. I mean, some of my favorite episodes, I think, is just those heavy conversations when it's a little controversial. And I mean, I think that's what is so important from this show and just like having a dialogue in general about these films because, everyone doesn't see it the same, and I think that's what makes something like dance film successful. There's a message and there's a conflict and there's a response.
And I appreciate that we're not trying to be the news and we're not trying to be a textbook. I think we're very self-aware that this is, we're three people with three opinions and we do our research and we try to be as careful as we can and as factual as we can to not just share it's not about opinions, but, share our perspectives and really try and work through some of these things. I have found through these episodes that my opinion morphs over the episode. I don't really start and finish in the same place, which I have to thank both of you for that because what a joy that I can actually massage my brain like this and not just be, sitting alone thinking about dance movies or thinking about Romeo and Michelle's or thinking about music videos or any sort of random stuff. Something that really stuck with me was last weekend. We had our December rehearsal for the Jam Youth Project, and one of our students, Samantha, shout out Samantha DiGiorgio, a girl that does her homework and puts in the work. She had listened to our the TikTok episode, and the fact that we actually have teenagers listening to the episodes on TikTok and on the music videos that's a dream. I think it's great that people that are adults that are using TikTok learn about it and that parents or other people that maybe have heard about it or whatever, just everyone should become informed on these things that affect so many people. But the fact that the teenagers are starting to listen to those episodes is huge. And it's something that's encapsulated as well. So maybe TikTok, hopefully, in my opinion, will go away and then it will become like a fad of the past and people can listen back to the episode or even with the internet made the video star and see like, wow, that's really when you pause at a certain point in time, you have a certain amount of detail and fresh perspective that you might lose if you do a retrospective episode. So I'm excited to see how those episodes age as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Because years ago, we could have been talking about like Snapchat, even though Snapchat wasn't a big dance app.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But, that's no longer a regular part of people's speech. Actually, years ago, it probably would have been Musical.ly, but they got sued. So that's why we're talking about TikTok now. But yeah, I'm interested in like recording as a time capsule and how those episodes are going to age with time.
Oh, if only like we were doing this back in the day with Dance Dance Revolution and who knows what could have gone on there. Like,
so good.
Is DDR screen dance? Let's find out.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Maybe we should do an episode talking about Mirror, even though that's like workout, but I don't know that technology well enough and I haven't used it.
Yeah.
Right.
But I have a feeling, I think we all have the feeling that not only is technology going nowhere, but dance and movement are kind of like the superpowers and these keys to unlock technology in a way. Like I watched Mulan this week.
Oh, the live action?
Yes, I won't go into my full analysis, but every Disney movie is a musical. And this is the only one that's not. They don't have any of the musical numbers. All of the dance numbers are replaced with fight sequences. And this is because Mulan is a warrior and not a princess. But the cinematography, the editing, the sound design, the camera movement, the choreography, I was just watching it so satisfied. Like, wow, what a great risk to make a Disney movie that is not a musical and to just swap in. You know, I can't help but see these things from like my nerd perspective. So I was like, I see exactly what they did. All the musical numbers are fight sequences. This is amazing. So I highly recommend that as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I like how the show, just as us bringing together, it gives us a muscle workout that we all need in general.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kept the wheels turning for me, like in a very, very good way that, you know, I can't even imagine just having those stagnate like during this time. And as has been pointed out, and I know, Jen, you've mentioned this quite a bit, and just how seriously dance in film and dance on film or dance into the screen, the marriage of dance and the screen medium can be taken seriously and can be treated as something very serious. I mean, even like listening to podcasts today, like if you hear a deep analysis on movie and then they'll say like, oh, I like the red shoes because it has dancing. And the host says, well, do you like Step Up too? Like, so
I like the first Step Up. I'll admit to that.
I was an extra in the fourth Step Up because they film at the PNE in Vancouver. Like they film a lot of dance movies there. They also filmed Elf there, I just found out. So I was an extra in the fourth Step Up, and I was so disturbed because they have like these dance battles, obviously. But they were doing 3D. It was Step Up 4, 3D. And every 3D shot, as you guys know, took so long to set up. So we're waiting and like, finally the scene begins and they're rehearsing, and the 3D effect they were going for was like spraying water bottles at the screen, and the water, I didn't see the movie, but like the water's going to come through the screen at the audience. But it was done in this very like sexual way. And like, I'm not going to repeat the lyrics, but it was like an exclamation point at the end of a sentence. And that was the effect. And I was just so depressed. Like, oh, I'm in Step Up. And I'm not kidding myself. I was an extra. It's like basically me having a day off work and like getting paid for it. So I'm not trying to pretend like I was involved at all. But I was there and I was like, okay, this is better than being an extra in 50 Shades of whatever. So I will just enjoy watching the dancing, and the dancing I got to see. I was like, oh, okay, we're spraying water bottles on that lyric. Great, cool. And I waited 40 minutes for this shot to get set up. But anyways, not to knock the Step Up movies. Have you guys seen Move on Netflix, by the way?
I have not, actually.
No.
So John Bogues and Lil Buck are the first episode.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And Ohad is the second episode, and I have not watched beyond that, but it looks really good. And I can definitely say the first episode's excellent. And I mean, the second episode just made me want to watch Mr. Gaga, to be honest. Like the full movie. I was like, I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch the full movie right after.
Right.
So we're coming up with a few ideas. I mean, more than a few ideas, I should say, for episodes and topics for next season. I know one thing that when we were planning season 1, we were talking about doing a landscape series because there's a ton of dance films that focus around the warehouse, the desert, the forest, and we see commonalities in those films, and that's something that we're going to be introducing in season 2. What are some other topics that you, Jen, Claire, wish to touch on for season 2?
Well, I actually just thought of this topic as we were talking earlier in this conversation. It would be great if we had listeners. I don't know if we can have listeners call in, but we possibly certainly have them respond via social media. But give us their on-set horror stories of making dance film and do kind of a compilation of that.
Totally. Yeah, that'd be really cool to do like some user. We could even do like a user submitted episode. Like we could ask them like, hey, send us a recording of something and we can put them together. Or something I would like to do, and this is funny coming from me because I'm not a fan of social media in case anyone doesn't get that by now, but is doing like some audience interaction and surveys. Like if we know we're going to have an episode on, let's say, not that we're going to do one on warehouse films, but if we were to do one on landscape films and we're narrowing down like, okay, we're going to do a desert episode, water episode, we could actually put the films out and the ones that are available and have people vote which ones they want us to talk about, which could be cool.
Yeah.
But I think one of my number ones for next season will probably be talking to more curators, even doing like a curator panel. I think especially with COVID, it's so interesting because you touch on everything. You touch on what's this person's perspective and their why for what they're doing. What are the real financial and legal implications of how things are structured and what they're able to do and what they want to do? And what are the other factors by way of audience or just what that festival's submissions or mission is? Like there's so many different intersections when you talk to a curator, just as there are when you talk to any sort of person that has any role in a film. But I think 2020, people had so many different things they had to do from that side. And the filmmakers don't make their decisions around curators, but the opinions and the perspectives of curators is very valuable for filmmakers who are looking to create work for these contexts. So I think talking to more curators and more curators internationally would be really cool because we talk about it every episode. Like we're very aware the three of us are based in North America, even though we have families from all over the world and we travel and we, have interest in things outside of our own neighborhood. But the reality is a great part about this show is that we're able to reach out to other people and bring them into the conversation and have them lead the conversation. So that would be super cool.
Obviously, this year was, a non-traveling year for most of us, but it would be really great if next year we bring the interviews that we brought this year to our season 2 and possibly have those interviews in person. I mean, it's just such a opportunity to meet other filmmakers and the dance film community in general in person, because you don't get to see those folks on a day-to-day basis. A lot of us are spread out across the world, and these events, there's a lot of them, and you can only pick and choose the ones that you can go to. And Claire, like you've said, that you've been able to kind of see these faces regularly through the computer screen, it would just be, the cherry on top to see a, one-on-one experience.
Just thinking that Dance Camera West is having its screening outdoors, or it's doing an outdoor drive-in screening this year, and it'd be actually kind of fun to have. I mean, I guess I could drive down there and be like a roving reporter and like interview like filmmakers through their cars.
That would be so good.
Let's get it on a moped and just like put the zoom in people's faces.
Well, that's the other thing. About 5 of the episodes from this season were done at Cascadia 2019. Would have loved to do some in DC this year, but obviously COVID affects that. But my festivals, I'm always happy to host interviews and make it happen. And I think they'd be great to hear from other festivals too, like have Frameform visit. There aren't many dance film podcasts at all. And, we're based here. We can drive to you. We can wear a face shield, whatever, even just later after COVID's all said and done, we'd love to come to your festival and like watch your films and rave about you. And, the festivals have a bigger place in our show than just major celebrations and the announcements and such?
Well, season 2 in general, if anyone is wondering when that is happening, we're right now in the planning process. We're going to take a little break because everyone deserves a break.
What?
We don't want to burn out.
What? A break?
And we'll be reconvening in the spring. We'll be doing some backlog episodes just so we're, packing the punch every week for y'all. And, we'll be reporting in and talking and discussing and navigating this show as a journey. Basically, this is just the start, and we hope that season 2 is going to be just as strong, and we will make sure that will happen with our planning process and organization with people that we're going to come in contact with. And I think the most important thing is to hear your feedback about the show. I mean, thank you to everyone who's been listening to us every week, as well as following us on Instagram. It's been really nice to see this growth of a community that is tuning in with us. And with that said, it would be really nice if you could leave a review for us. It would really help this podcast and this platform to reach even higher levels of listeners. Share it with a friend, share it with your teacher, share it to, everyone.
And here's the thing. Even though our posts that we put up have a date on them, these episodes are not linked to a specific date really at all. So feel free to browse the library. It's not like some podcasts where they come out daily and, I missed one and now I have to catch up. Every week is a new week. Every conversation's a new conversation. And if leaving a review sounds like this huge burden, then I'm going to invite you to think of it in a new way. Write 1 to 2 sentences and then click a star rating.
Or just give us a star rating. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. That's easy. It's
star
one
rating,
click.
just write cool. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
We want to hear from you. That's really important. And if you have any, wishes of where the podcast could go, we're open to feedback on that as well. And like we say every week, you can write to us at frameformpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at frameformpod. That's frameformpod. And you can leave us a message on there too. We're very active.
We read what you say.
The email might come back a few days later, but we are very active. At least I am on social media, so I will see your message if you reach out. In general, we're really happy about the show. I know I am. I'm happy that we have come this far and we're going beyond. I'm so happy that we have a platform or even just people that are backing us up. Rixie, Mason, Tanner, Dan. Shout out to y'all just making us, have our voices be heard and supporting us.
Yeah, it just makes such a huge difference knowing that we have that support both on the, on the technical side of things and the content side of things from the beginning. And again, we're so thankful for Rixie for hosting us, to Mason for, essentially teaching us how to use these things and making sure that the show sounds as good as it sounds. So we really couldn't do it without you.
Totally. I'm used to wearing, all of us are used to wearing many hats at a time. So with this show, to literally be just responsible for what comes out of my mouth and recording it and making sure that, we're all on the Zoom call and our content's organized. That's been such great peace of mind, and to know that it's professionally done. And we're part of this cool family of other podcasts. That's the other cool thing, is we're just like the nerdy sibling to like Butter and Debuff and Daily Rec. It's nice to be in this family. Yes, and feed the jar. Sorry, I haven't got into D&D yet, but I do know some kids that are into it, so maybe they'll go from Frameform to feed the jar.
I don't play D&D, but that show has made me like want to dabble in D&D just because it sounded so fun and it was like really clear to understand like what was happening. And also just like it's Mason and Tanner and Dan and Steve, and Steve is the voice behind Debuff. It was really entertaining just listening to them and the jokes, the little jokes inside that show. There will be a season 2 on that as well, everyone, if you're interested in that.
Woohoo!
But definitely take a look at that library of shows because they are really well produced and well made and have some awesome stories behind them.
I'm a big Rixie fan in general. We are laptop sticker official.
Yes.
So that's when you know it's serious.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening to us. Let us know if you have any feedback. If you think that we need merch, let us know. Maybe we can make that happen, or just a sticker. And also we're going to promise that we make sure that we say to check the show notes at the beginning of the episode every week. That is our definite comment card there that we will be promising in the future recordings. But other than that, I just want to say thank you to Jen. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah, making it happen.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting us to nerd out with you every single week. I have enjoyed coming to the screen/cauldron with you two and just brewing these conversations. So thank you so much.
Yes, it's incredible working with both of you too. And as both of you guys have mentioned at some point today, like I've just, I gain something new every time I go into one of these recordings, and my mind just, cracks wide open. So thank you both so much for all the work that you put in and all the insight that you bring.
Well, other than that, it's awesome. You're awesome. The show's awesome. Listeners, you're awesome. Other than that, we will see you next year, and Happy New Year.
Happy 2021!
Frameform is a production of Rixie, hosted by me, Hannah Weber, Claire Schweitzer, and Jen Wright. Edited and mixed by myself and Mason Carlton. Thanks for listening.